Commander Elias Ward had been many places in his life. He had stood on the cracked red soil of Mars, had sailed above the blue storms of Neptune, and had walked in the silent halls of ships older than his own nation. But never, never, had he felt what he felt now. The invitation lay heavy in his hands, though it weighed no more than paper. He read it once, then again, the strange looping script of the Vayari language glowing faintly with living light. It was not just words. It was an honor, a risk, and a bridge between two species who had only just begun to trust one another. The Vayari were not like humans. They were taller, their bodies stretched long and elegant, their skin carrying a sheen like polished glass. Their voices rang with harmonics that could shake the chest or soothe the heart. And to them, ritual was everything. A handshake, a meal, even a word. It all meant more than simple courtesy. It was a thread, binding person to person, species to species, and now Elias was invited to the heart of it, the Vayari flagship. No human had ever walked its corridors. No human had been called guest by their people. He should have been overjoyed. He should have felt proud. And he did, at first. But pride and fear often travel together. He wondered if his every movement, his every smile would be studied, judged, weighed against centuries of Vayari traditions. The journey began with silence. The shuttle hummed as it crossed the void, carrying him toward the massive vessel that shone like a crystal moon in the darkness. The closer he came, the more uneasy he felt. Its hull caught the starlight and broke it into colors he had no name for, colors that seemed to bend the mind. To the Vayari, this was beauty. To Elias, it was a reminder. He was stepping into a world not his own. When the shuttle docked, his heart thudded hard in his chest. The airlock hissed, and for a moment he hesitated. One step forward and history would remember him. One mistake and history might curse his name. The doors slid open. He was met with light. The corridor beyond seemed alive, the walls shifting faintly. Like breathing crystal, shapes moved ahead, tall, radiant, graceful. The Vayari delegation stood waiting. "Commander Elias Ward of Earth," their leader intoned. The voice was not just sound. It vibrated in his bones, carrying weight and music together. "You are our guest. You are welcome among us." Elias bowed slightly, unsure if the gesture matched their customs, but too tense to stand stiff. "Thank you. It is an honor," he said, his words quiet in the vastness of the hall. The Vayari inclined their heads, and the smallest ripple of light passed through the walls, as though the ship itself acknowledged his arrival. They led him deeper inside. The halls glowed with soft color, shifting hues like sunrise and sunset woven together. Everywhere he looked, symbols were carved into the crystal. Stories of battles, of unions, of journeys across stars. He could not read them, but he felt their importance. He was walking through living history, and the air seemed thick with expectation. When they reached the grand chamber, Elias stopped breathing for a moment. It was a hall of glass and flame. Hundreds of Vayari stood gathered, their forms glittering under a ceiling that opened to the stars. Music hummed softly from unseen sources, a vibration that felt like the pulse of the universe itself. A long table stretched across the chamber, filled with dishes that shimmered and shifted like liquid gems. The smell was sweet, sharp, and strange. Elias did not know if his body could handle such food, but he knew refusing would be an insult. "Sit," said the leader, their voice carrying no threat, only command. "Eat with us. Tonight we begin." And so Elias sat. His hands trembled faintly as he lifted the first dish, the eyes of 100 Vayari fixed on him. He felt the weight of every gaze. He forced himself to taste, to smile, to nod politely. It was sweet, almost like honey, but it burned faintly as it slid down his throat. He coughed once, then hid it behind a smile. Laughter rippled among the Vayari, not cruel but curious, like parents watching a child stumble at a first step. The music grew louder. Voices rose. The feast continued. Elias kept his composure, though inside his chest a storm was brewing. This was only the first night, only the first ritual. And already he knew. Whatever the Vayari meant by guest, it was not what humans meant. For now, he played along. For now, he smiled and ate their food. But in the back of his mind, a whisper of warning grew louder. This is more than a meal. This is a promise. The first night was not like anything Elias Ward had ever known. The grand chamber of the Vayari was alive with color and song. The walls shimmered as if they were made from sunlight caught inside glass. The table stretched endlessly, covered with bowls and plates that glowed faintly, holding food that looked more like jewels than meals. Elias sat at the center, the place of honor, though it felt more like the place of danger. The robe they had given him, thin, silver, and soft against his skin, marked him out from all others. It said without words, "This is our guest. This one matters." The Vayari began their songs. At first it was soft, a hum that filled the air like the low ringing of a bell. Then voices rose higher, layered and woven until it became a river of sound. Elias could feel it deep in his chest, shaking his bones, tugging at his heart. It was beautiful, yes, but also overwhelming. Dishes were brought forward by attendants who glided silently like shadows of light. They placed the plates in front, of him first, waiting for him to taste before anyone else began. That detail did not escape Elias. He understood. Every eye in the chamber was watching his reaction. Every bite was a test. The first dish shimmered blue and gold. It smelled sweet, but the sweetness carried a sharp edge that made his throat tighten even before he tasted it. Still, he lifted the spoon and let the food touch his tongue. Warmth spread instantly. It was honey, spice, and fire, all at once. His throat burned, his eyes watered, and for one terrible moment he thought he might cough and disgrace himself. But he forced the swallow, forced the smile, and nodded. A wave of approval rippled through the crowd. Laughter followed. Light, like the breaking of crystal. Not cruel, not mocking, but joyous. To them, his effort was not weakness. It was bravery. Another dish was placed before him. This one pulsed faintly, as if alive. Elias hesitated, then took a small piece between his fingers. The taste was cool, almost like mint, yet it seemed to sing against his teeth. He shivered, unsure if it was pleasant or terrifying. Again, the Vayari watched. Again, he smiled. The feast continued like this, hour after hour. Dishes of light and sound, drinks that fizzed like stars on his tongue, music rising and falling like tides. The Vayari around him laughed, sang, and touched their crystal hands together in gestures that seemed both casual and sacred. Elias played the part of honored guest. He raised his cup when they raised theirs. He bowed his head when the music softened. He offered short words of thanks, though he had no idea if they carried the meaning he intended. And yet, beneath his polite mask, unease grew. The way they looked at him, he noticed it now. Their eyes, bright and shimmering like facets of a diamond, held something more than curiosity. They looked at him with intensity, with expectation. Some leaned closer than necessary, their gazes lingering as if studying not only his face but his soul. One elder Vayari approached during a lull in the music. Their voice was soft, almost tender. "You eat with us. You share our table. Already you are closer than stranger. Already you are within." Elias nodded, uncertain what the words meant but unwilling to offend. "I am honored," he said, the phrase he had repeated a dozen times already. The elder touched his arm lightly, a sound like chimes ringing at the contact. Yes, honored. And soon, bound. The word froze him. Bound. He wanted to ask, but before he could, the music rose again, and the elder slipped back into the crowd, leaving him with only questions. The feast went on, until time itself seemed meaningless. Finally, the song softened and the Vayari rose together. The leader stood tall, crystal skin shining like fire under the starlight ceiling. "Tonight the guest has shared our food," the leader declared. Their voice carried to every corner of the hall, echoing in Elias's chest. "He has tasted our flame. He has entered our circle. Tomorrow he will step further. Tomorrow he will join the binding. The crowd answered with a roar of harmony, voices blending into one earth-shaking note. Elias's blood ran cold, though his face showed only calm. He smiled, he nodded, he stood when they stood. But inside, a storm of dread raged. The binding? What did that mean? What promise had he just walked into without knowing? As they led him away to his chamber, the song still ringing in his ears, Elias felt the trap closing. The feast had not been a simple welcome. It had been a doorway, and he had stepped through without even realizing it. Part 3. The ceremony revealed the morning. Came too soon. Elias Ward had not slept well. His chamber, though beautiful, was strange and alive. The walls glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. The bed was soft, but it hummed with a vibration that lulled and unsettled at the same time. His mind refused to rest. Over and over, he replayed the leader's words from the night before. Tomorrow he will join the binding. What was the binding? Why did the elder speak of being bound? What had he agreed to by sharing their food? When the door slid open, Elias rose quickly. A group of Vayari attendants entered, carrying silken robes of silver and white. They moved with grace, their long fingers delicate as they draped the fabric across his shoulders. The cloth clung to him like water, cool and smooth. "You honor us," one attendant whispered, their voice a gentle chime. "The binding will be beautiful." Elias's heart tightened. "Tell me," he said carefully, "what is the binding?" The attendants exchanged glances, a ripple of light passing through their skin. Finally, one answered, "It is the vow, the joining. To eat at our table is to enter our family. To wear the robe is to promise your blood. The binding is the final step. You will not refuse." The words hit him like a blow. He tried to keep his face calm, but his stomach twisted. A vow? A joining? His blood? This was no simple ritual of welcome. This was permanent. "I think there may be a mistake," Elias said slowly. "Humans do not make such promises. Not in this way." The attendants looked puzzled. "Mistake? There can be no mistake. You were invited. You accepted. Now you are chosen." Before he could protest further, they guided him out of the chamber. Their touch was firm, not rough, but there was no chance to resist. The halls glowed brighter as they walked, filled with the sound of distant singing. The closer they came to the central chamber, the stronger the music grew. When they entered, Elias's breath caught. The grand hall had been transformed. No feast table remained. Instead, a circle of light burned at the center, its edges marked with runes that pulsed like fire. Around it stood hundreds of Vayari, their bodies shining like stars, their voices rising in harmony. The air was thick with sound, heavy with expectation. The leader stepped forward, arms raised. "Behold," they declared, their voice echoing through the chamber. "The guest who is no longer guest? The one who eats with us, the one who wears the robe of silver. Today he will join the binding. Today his spirit becomes ours." The crowd sang louder, their voices shaking the chamber. Elias felt trapped in the middle of a storm. A figure emerged from the circle. Taller than the others, their skin refracted the light into 1,000 colors. They moved with slow grace, each step ringing like crystal struck by a hammer. This was not just any Vayari. This was a chosen partner. They extended a hand toward Elias, long fingers shimmering. "Come," they said softly. "Be bound." Elias's chest tightened. He wanted to run, he wanted to shout, but his training held him still. Every instinct screamed that if he refused now, it would mean disaster. The Vayari valued ritual above all things. A broken ceremony could be seen as insult, betrayal, even war. But to accept? To give himself into something he did not understand? That was no choice at all. His voice faltered. The music dimmed slightly, as if the entire room leaned in to hear him. "I am honored," he began, the words bitter in his mouth. But I do not understand what this binding means. For humans, such promises are not made lightly. We cannot bind without knowing. The leader stepped forward, their crystal body glowing brighter. The binding is forever. It is the joining of spirit and bloodline. You become one with your partner. You become Vayari. The words stole the breath from his lungs. Become Vayari? They expected him to surrender not just a promise, but his very identity. Elias felt cold. His heart pounded. Around him, the voices rose again, chanting his name, urging him forward. The chosen partner's hand was still outstretched, waiting, expecting. This was not welcome. This was not friendship. This was a trap, sealed with music and light. And now, Elias Ward, the first human ever to be called guest, stood on the edge of a vow that could change not only his life, but the fate of all humanity. Elias Ward stood frozen in the circle of light. The music pounded in his chest. The chants of the Vayari pressed on him like a great wave, pulling him forward when all he wanted was to step back. The chosen partner's hand still reached toward him, long fingers glowing faintly as if waiting for him to surrender. His throat was dry. His palms were slick with sweat beneath the silver robe. He tried to steady his breath, but the weight of hundreds of eyes crushed his lungs. I cannot, he whispered at first so softly that only he could hear it. But the circle demanded louder words and the crowd would not wait. Come, the leader urged, voice ringing like a bell through glass. Do not hesitate. A guest who refuses destroys trust. Without trust there can be no alliance. Without alliance there can be only war. The words cut deep. Elias felt his blood run cold. Was this ceremony not just a personal vow, but also a political one? If he broke it, would the Vayari truly see it as betrayal? Would Earth pay the price for his refusal? He swallowed hard. His training told him to keep calm, to buy time, to never let panic decide. But this was different. This was not a battle in space or a treaty on paper. This was his own body, his own future, being claimed without his consent. The chants grew louder. The walls pulsed with light, as if the entire ship demanded his answer. His heart raced and a thought echoed in his mind. If I step forward, I lose myself. If I step back, I may lose my world. The chosen partner moved closer, hand still extended. Their voice was soft, almost tender. You will not be harmed, you will be joined, you will never be alone again. Elias shivered. The words meant to comfort felt like chains. He thought of Earth, its blue skies, its chaotic streets, its flawed but free people. He thought of his mother's laugh, the smell of coffee in the morning, the simple joy of choosing who to love, who to call family. Would all of that vanish if he surrendered here? Would he become something less human, less himself? He raised his voice at last. I am grateful for your welcome, but humans do not bind this way. We cannot give what is forced, our promises must be chosen. A ripple went through the crowd, confusion, disbelief. Some faces hardened like crystal under pressure, others tilted, with sorrow, as if hearing a child say something foolish. The leader's glow brightened, filling the hall. You misunderstand. To refuse is not your right. You have eaten our food. You have worn our robe. The steps have been taken. Only the binding remains. The chants rose again, sharper now, less like music and more like command. Bind, bind, bend. Elias's breath came faster. His chest ached with the pressure of choice. He could feel the trap closing, each second narrowing the path until only two roads remained, surrender or defiance. He clenched his fists beneath the robe. His voice broke with strain. If I refuse, what then? Do you cast me out? Do you declare war on my people? The leader's silence was answer enough. Around the circle, some Vayari lowered their eyes. Others lifted their voices higher, pressing harder, as though to drown out his resistance with sound. His heart pounded like a drum. He wanted to scream, to break the glowing circle with his fists, to run until the stars themselves could hide him. But he stood still, sweat dripping, throat burning. The chosen partner's hand hung in the air between them, waiting. Their eyes were full of strange light, half kindness, half hunger. "Do not fear," they whispered. "Once you are bound, the fear will fade. You will be at peace." Peace. The word twisted in his gut. Peace without freedom was not peace. It was silence. It was a cage. Inside, Elias fought himself. Duty screamed one thing: endure, protect Earth, do what they demand. But another voice, smaller yet stronger, rose from deep within him. "You are human. You are not theirs to take." The music surged. The crowd leaned forward. The circle burned brighter. The moment of decision was upon him, and Elias Ward, soldier, envoy, guest, prisoner, knew that whatever choice he made now would echo across two worlds. The circle of light burned brighter with every passing second. Elias Ward stood in its center, the chants of the Vayari surrounding him like a wall of sound. His ears rang, his heart hammered against his ribs. The chosen partner's hand was still stretched out, waiting for his surrender. Every instinct inside him screamed run, but there was nowhere to go. The walls glowed, the crowd pressed closer, and the leader's radiant body blocked the only path out. "You hesitate," the leader said, their voice calm but sharp as glass. "Why do you hesitate? The binding is sacred. Do not dishonor it. Do not dishonor us." The voices of the crowd rose louder, echoing the leader's words. "Bind, bind, bind." The sound pounded in his skull until it felt like his mind might break. Elias lifted his hands slightly, trembling. He forced himself to speak above the noise. "I am not Vayari. I am human. You cannot ask me to give what I do not understand." His words did not calm them. They only stirred more whispers, more ripples of light across their crystalline skin. Some of the Vayari looked angry now, their eyes flashing. Others looked wounded, as if he had struck them. The leader stepped forward, glow intensifying. "You shared our feast. You wore our robe. To us, that is consent. To us, you have already said yes." Elias shook his head. His chest felt tight, but he would not bow. "No," he said firmly, his voice cracking but clear. "That is not yes. Not for my people. Not for me." The crowd gasped, the sound like glass breaking. The chosen partner froze, their hand still outstretched, their face unreadable but shining with sudden pain. For a moment, silence filled the hall. Only the hum of the circle remained, vibrating in Elias's bones. Then the leader's voice cut through. "Refusal is destruction. If you turn away now, you tear the threads we have woven. Your people will not be welcome. Your name will be remembered as the one who broke us." The words stabbed deep. Elias saw in his mind the faces of those waiting back on Earth, his commanders, his people, his family. If he refused, would they pay the price? Would this fragile alliance crumble because of him? His hands shook. Sweat dripped down his temple. For a heartbeat, he almost gave in. He almost reached for that glowing hand, just to end the wait. Just to buy peace. But then, from somewhere deep inside came the memory of a voice. His mother's voice years ago when he was still young. "Elias, never give away what makes you you, not for fear, not for anyone." That memory broke the chains tightening around him. His fear turned to fire. His trembling stilled. He lifted his head and met the leader's glowing eyes. "No," he said again, stronger this time. "I will not bind. Not like this." The chamber shook with the reaction. Some Vayari cried out in anger, their voices sharp and cutting. Others sang low, mournful notes like bells tolling at a funeral. The chosen partner lowered their hand slowly, their glow dimming with sorrow. But Elias did not stop. His words spilled out, fierce and desperate. "If you force me, then this is not honor. It is chains. If you demand my promise without my choice, then you do not welcome me. You break me, and a broken guest cannot be family." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. His words hung in the air like fire and smoke. The leader stood still, their light flickering uncertainly. The crowd murmured, voices clashing, harmony breaking into chaos. Elias's chest heaved, his voice rough with emotion. I came here for peace. But peace is not made through force. Peace is only real when it is chosen, freely. The circle's glow flickered, dimming as though the ship itself had heard and faltered. The music stopped. The chanting ceased. For the first time since the ceremony began, Elias was no longer drowned in sound. He stood alone in silence, his words echoing across the chamber. The breaking point had come. He had spoken the truth of his people, the truth of himself. Now he waited, heart pounding, to see whether it would save him, or destroy everything. The silence after his refusal felt heavier than any battlefield Elias Ward had ever stood upon. Hundreds of eyes stared at him, glowing facets of light filled with anger, pain, or confusion. The circle of fire around him flickered, as if unsure whether to blaze brighter or fade away. The chosen partner's hand lowered slowly, their expression unreadable, their glow dimming like a setting sun. Elias's breath came hard, but his resolve had sharpened. He knew he could not stop here. If he stayed silent now, the Veeri might twist his words into weakness. He had to speak, not as a soldier, not as an envoy, but as a human being. He lifted his voice, letting it carry to every corner of the chamber. You honor me, he began, his words trembling but strong. You honor me more than I can ever repay. To sit at your table, to walk your shining halls, to be called guest, it is more than I dreamed. But what you ask of me now, I cannot give. The yell. Crowd stirred, restless. Whispers rippled like waves through crystal. Still he pressed on. You say that to eat with you is consent, that to wear your robe is a vow. But for my people, consent is not taken. It is given, freely. A promise forced is no promise at all. A vow made under fear is no vow worth keeping. The leader's glow flared bright with anger. You dare question our ways? You claim our sacred binding is false? Elias met the brilliance head-on, though it burned his eyes. I do not call it false. I call it different. For you, this binding is honor. For me, it is chains. We are not the same. Our ways are not the same. And if you want true peace between us, then you must accept that truth. A murmur swept the hall. Some Veeri looked outraged. Others seemed uncertain, their eyes dimming as though doubt cracked their certainty. Elias drew a shaky breath, his chest aching, but he kept going. His words poured from him like a flood, raw and unpolished. When a human gives love, it is not because we are told to. It is because our hearts speak. When a human chooses family, it is not by command but by desire. We are not chains, we are bridges. We connect because we want to, not because we are forced. He paused, his voice rough, eyes burning. If you take me without my choice, you do not gain me. You lose me. You lose what makes me human. And if you break me, then what bond is left to share? The hall was utterly still. Even the walls seemed to have stopped glowing, as though the ship itself listened. The chosen partner stepped closer, their hand no longer outstretched but folded against their chest. Their voice, soft and uncertain, broke the silence. Then, what do you offer, human? If not the binding, then what? Elias turned to them, his own hands trembling but open. I offer truth. I offer friendship. I offer alliance built not on chains, but on choice. I cannot promise my bloodline, but I can promise my heart will be honest. And when I give my bond, it will be because I choose it, not because I was forced. The words rang out clear, echoing across the chamber. They were not polished diplomacy. They were not the language of treaties. They were the simple truth of a man who refused to surrender his humanity. For a long moment, no one moved. No one breathed. Then slowly, one elder lowered their head in a bow. Another followed, and another. The murmurs grew, no longer sharp, but thoughtful, uncertain. The leader's glow flickered, their brilliance dimming as they struggled to hold onto authority. At last, the chosen partner raised their eyes and spoke again, their voice carrying both sorrow and wonder. Then let it be recorded. The human bond is not taken, it is given, freely. The words spread through the crowd like fire in dry grass, repeated, echoed, transformed. Freely, freely, freely. Elias stood trembling in the circle, sweat dripping down his brow, heart still pounding. He did not know if he had won or only delayed disaster. But he knew one thing with certainty. He had spoken the truth of his people. And for the first time, the Veyari were listening. The great hall of the Veyari was silent. The circle of light that had burned so fiercely now glowed soft and dim, no longer a cage, but a memory. Elias Ward stood in its center, his silver robe damp with sweat, his body trembling, his voice still echoing in the air. He had spoken. He had refused. And yet, he still lived. The chosen partner was the first to move. Slowly, they lowered their head, a gesture that seemed both sorrowful and respectful. The human bond is not taken, they repeated softly, their crystalline skin flickering with subdued light. It is given. The words spread, carried from voice to voice. Some Veyari spoke them with confusion, some with anger, but many with quiet wonder. Given. Freely. Elias's chest rose and fell heavily. He did not know if this moment marked peace or the breaking of it. His every instinct screamed caution, but when the leader finally stepped forward, their glow less blinding now, he realized something had changed. The leader's voice no longer rang like command. It trembled, carrying something Elias had never heard before in a Veyari leader. Uncertainty. For us, the binding is the highest honor, they said. To share blood, to share spirit is the truest trust we know. But you speak of another way, a way of choice. Elias met their eyes, forcing his voice to steady. Yes. For humans, choice is everything. Without it, love is not love. Without it, peace is not peace. If you want us as family, you must accept us as we are. We cannot become you, but we can stand beside you. The leader stood silent for a long time. The hall seemed to hold its breath. Finally, with slow, deliberate movement, the leader bowed their radiant form. Then let it be recorded in our memory and in our history. The human path is different. The human gift is choice. We will honor this. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some voices rose in protest, but others in agreement. The binding ceremony was halted, undone not by defiance alone, but by truth spoken clearly. The glowing circle faded entirely. The music died away. The chants ceased. Elias felt his knees weaken as the pressure lifted from him. For the first time, since he had stepped into the chamber, he could breathe freely. The chosen partner looked at him with shining eyes, sorrow mixed with curiosity. Then perhaps one day, when your heart chooses, you may still bind. But until then, we wait. We learn. Elias gave a small nod, his throat too tight to speak. He had not only protected himself, he had planted a seed. That night, no warships armed themselves. No treaties shattered. Instead, the Veyari began to whisper a new word, one that had no true place in their language until now. Choice. It spread, like a spark among them, fragile but alive. When Elias was escorted back to his chamber, he did not feel like a prisoner. He felt like something else, something heavier, something greater. He had come as a guest, almost been made a captive, but was leaving as a teacher, not by power, not by weapons, but by the courage to say no. Later, when his shuttle prepared to return him to his own people, the leader met him one final time at the docking bay. You spoke against us, they said. Their tone was not accusing, but thoughtful. Yet you did not break us, you gave us something new. Perhaps this is what it means to be human.